All right. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our very first free Thursdays. I had to really practice that because if I say it too fast, it's a little bit like that. So I'm Fran. I'm the founder of Cacao. If you don't know me, but I think you all do by now. And I'm going to light a candle just to call in the spirit of this Thursday session, spirit of cacao. And I also have my beautiful cup of cacao here. So you are absolutely welcome to join me with any part of this. If you just want to place a hand on your heart, just close the eyes and relax. If that's available to you, then do so. This won't be longer than a minute, but I just invite you to just connect into your breath. Connect into how you're sitting, if you're walking, how you are walking, how your day has been so far. And as I light this candle, we just acknowledge the spirit in all things, the spirit of this conversation, the spirit of this day, the spirit of our hearts, the spirit of the sky, the spirit of Mother Earth, of the sacred fire, of the four winds, directions, and just anything else that you would like to acknowledge. Just breathe that in. And just take another 2 breaths. Use them to ground yourself. Use them for a bit of sacred pause, if that's what you are needing today, this moment. And just a moment of gratitude for being here, for being present. I'm putting the candle down and I have a sip of my cacao, just acknowledging the beautiful spirit of cacao. That is the reason we are all here today, gathered to connect. You can take another breath or 2 before opening your eyes if you had them closed. And then I'll just introduce how the session is going to be. All right. So, very relaxed session today. The email gave very limited amount of information, but that's because this is an opportunity for anybody to ask a question, for anybody to get a little bit of hot seat mentoring from me. If you would like some of my guidance or advice on any topic that I may have an answer to or some guidance on around cacao, ritual, ceremony, working with cacao in a sacred way. And around about halfway through the session, I will just be doing a bit of a shameless announcement about our upcoming cacao training, which is now, I know Candace is done, but it's now longer, it's more in depth. And at the end of our session, we will, I'll just drop in the chat box if you feel called to make a donation. There's an organization that I support here locally in Cape Town where I live. And I'll just put the URL link there, and you can just find your way to their site and do your thing. So this is all very relaxed. If you have any particular questions, please put them into the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself because we are a few on the call tonight, which is nice. We can get through it a little bit more then. Yeah, otherwise, if you're just here to listen as well, hopefully somebody asks me something, because otherwise we're also going to be sitting here crickets. So feel free to unmute yourself, put an electronic hand up, put a real hand up, put something in the chat box. I'm going to take a sip of my cacao while I wait for something to come through. Hey, Kirsten. It is Kirsten, eh? Not Kristen. Kirsten. That's it.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay.
Where are you
This
coming
is very
from
weird.
tonight?
Well, hi everyone. First and foremost, can you hear me? Because I am working with the mic. I don't have a sound card on my laptop. I'm from OBS. All right. So yeah, hi Candace as well. Okay, Fran, I do have a question. It's been a question I've been asking for myself, like being someone from this specific part of the world. And I also have like a lot of friends in like traditional spaces. So I always have this question, like, how can cacao kind of be a medicine that we can use specifically in South Africa now that can kind of yeah, how can it serve us? Yeah, you know. Yeah, since you have been working with it quite a lot, and also going back and forth with communities that have been working with it for such a long time, I've been wondering how you have been experiencing working with it here in South Africa. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. It's a lot of words.
Love that. I love that question. Thank you so much. So I often talk about bridging the gap, and either it's from culture to culture or it's from my understanding of something, speaking to somebody who I assume I have a judgment on that doesn't really understand what I'm just saying if I speak certain words. So I try find a way to adapt so that the essence is still going across. And so for me, when I really sit with what cacao is in the essence, it's love. And love is universal. Love is so universal. So it's not that I'm dishonoring any traditions that are part of this land that I connect to. It's not that I'm dishonoring my ancestry, which is a combination here of African soil and European. And it's not that I am being disrespectful to the cultures from which I've learned cacao through, which now very deeply rooted into the Mayan cosmovision. But before that, it was with the Hindu culture in Bali. So there's a massive cross-pollination here of different cultures linked into people, going right the way back though. And the umbrella for all of this, it's universal. The messages of love and compassion. It's of the heart space. And even this understanding of the heart space, this, you might say that, okay, this comes from a certain tradition. I learned about the heart chakra, for example, through understanding yoga and Tibetan Buddhism at the time, actually in my early 20s, talking about Tibetan Buddhists would actually refer to this space as being the mind. Often in our more modern psychological space, we'll say the mind is here. But they would say the mind is here. Mind and heart were almost interchangeable words. And then I learned about it through traditional yoga practices and philosophy. And of course, in a lot of the traditions that I now learn from in the Mesoamerican areas, it's talking about the connection of the heart of the sky, the heart of the earth, and us here being humans that are the bridge in the middle world. A lot of the shamanic cultures also talk about the upper world, the lower world, and the middle world. So this idea that there is an understanding of heart and what that is in the different cultures, in the different traditions, and love. Love is universal, and not just to have the word love as being something that's not understood as being an embodied experience. So as I have just been a human on this planet, and I have consciously journeyed for the last 20 years into more understanding of what that means. What does it mean to be human? And how do I understand being spiritual and human at the same time? It really is through deepening my relationship with my own heart. And so much of this is through compassion. And I understand that first and foremost with my own relationship with myself, compassion to myself, kindness to myself, forgiveness, deep, deep love that just continues to grow and grow and grow. And then when I link out to the outside world, I don't see the label now of, oh, this is a culture from South Africa, or this is a culture from Guatemala, or this is a culture from India or Bali or Nepal or all these other places that I traveled to and that I still have beautiful spiritual mentors from. I just see people, I see beautiful spiritual beings having a human experience. And it's almost like the color lens that I look through now is one of love and compassion. And I wouldn't even say a scale of that, because I'm not judging if somebody has develop self-compassion or not. But it's definitely noticeable in their actions. Do they care for others? Do they care for the environment? Do they have compassion for when somebody is needing a little bit of softness, to be held with a bit of love, a hug, some presence, eye contact, or when we just need to acknowledge somebody by listening. So it comes across in their actions. So I start to view the world a little differently than I did before. I'd used to notice definitely skin color and obviously race linked to that, and it was very important, like what tradition I was learning under, and that was important for me at that time. But I see it so universally now. So to answer your question with one sentence, cacao for me is the understanding of universal love, and her teaching is to help me remember the essence that I already have inside that connects me to every single other human being and non-human. If you want to take it further than that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for expanding on that. And yeah, I guess the humanness really came out there. I really love that you touched on that. I believe in that as well. Um, yeah, I find that I think for myself, I believe in the oneness. I believe in love being universal also, and it resonates with me as well. I think being in South Africa and not having a history with cacao, sometimes I like when I interact with people, it's more like the language that I am trying to use in order to bridge a gap in understanding. And I think there's like a lot of pain that we deal with spiritually. Like there's a lot in the Middle Earth that we are dealing with in South Africa. So like that's kind of like personally for myself, I see cacao as a powerful medicine for that, and this work is necessary. And I don't have the answers to it. I guess that's why I'm like asking. And but I love that you brought up the humanness, like yeah, to not forget that and not to get lost in sometimes the pain and what's happening uh, in this worldly sense, and not to get so trapped in that, but to remind ourselves of the humanness, of the oneness of love, and how universal that can be. So thank you for that reminder. I really appreciate it, and for taking the time to kind of dissect that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
thank
sure.
you.
And Kirsten, just one more thing to say on that is, for me, this is very practical. This is very practical work, and I don't need to be using a language that's going to make me feel like I know a lot, but yet alienate myself from the people I'm around. So where I found it to be very practical, no matter who I'm engaging with, I'll work with either the physical medicine, consuming her, or now, to call in the spirit of her and what I've learned from her, and actually to engage in right relationship with others and to open up dialogue where conflict might be there if that's needed. I'm just thinking of how this could link into so many different ways of working with so much in our country that still needs to be spoken about and acknowledged. Um, and just to listen and to hold space for people while they speak. And it could be very uncomfortable for me, but cacao might help me just drop into my heart a little bit more than before. I'm also on a journey. I'm not going to be perfect from one sitting with cacao, and then to listen to, maybe be in like a space where I'm feeling quite conflicted within myself, just sitting to listen to people and engage in dialogue and really listen from a place of heart rather than a place from ego. And cacao assists me to be in my heart more and more and more. My ego has a place, of course, for survival, for, for all the things that I want to do as this individual of identity of Fran, which has a place as well. But in terms of relating to people, I think the heart has more place. And no matter whether we're talking in a political context, in a context of healing, interpersonal spaces, in a space of, the work environment, the home environment, across cultures, understanding other traditions, being open to learning, just being a human on this planet. I think the heart really has so much wisdom We can just trust that. And kindness is such a beautiful medicine. Kindness. Yeah. So I know I'm speaking, a little bit broad here, because I'm not sure if there was a direct something behind your question, but it was broad enough that I think, the answer being broad enough could hopefully give you a little bit of direction into any specifics that you had there without needing to ask it too specifically. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Pleasure. Thank you and welcome. Let's see, Candice, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Fran, hi, nice to see you again. I just wanted to connect because I thought, what is everybody else doing on First Thursdays? And obviously everyone's doing all sorts of things in town, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to connect and do something more aligned with what I want to do. So thank you for holding space for us. It's great. I was actually just thinking of a question, well, not a question, I was thinking of a context that kind of came up based on what you just said, Kirsten, around less so, I guess, the broader sense and more so from a family sense, in that I heard via my mother, well, actually, this is how it works, in the family group. I heard via my sister, who'd heard from my mom, who'd heard from my father, that she was basically, because obviously she knows what I've been doing and all that. She was like, oh no, just don't tell your father, kind of thing. And I thought it was really interesting, I suppose, because he has, I suppose, his own beliefs and grew up probably in a very Christian background, which I've obviously moved away from in the last 20 years probably. And it's just interesting because I guess I'm imagining that in the world that you're in this space, obviously there must have been times when you've come up against these kind of prejudices and questions and judgments, which always blows my mind, given how we're not supposed to judge, no matter what you're doing. Yeah, I just wondered if you've kind of had to deal with that, and how do you approach it? I haven't even gone there yet because I was just like, I don't have it in me at this point in time, and I'm doing my own thing, and it doesn't worry me that much. But I noticed, because my kids obviously spend quite a bit of time with their grandparents as well, and I noticed the other day that he also had said something to her, not about cacao specifically, but about God, and obviously it comes in, I guess, in all the same sort of spaces. I guess he's trying to put some of his opinions within the space, and obviously the kids are more aligned to and are open to what I'm doing and get involved in what I'm doing. So yeah, I was just wondering whether you've had that you come up against that, and how you deal with that, and how you dealt with it.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much. I've got quite a bit to say on that, but let me start by just saying how important context is as well. So for each of us to sit with distilling the essence of what this work of cacao is. So, this is linked into what Kirsten was actually asking, well, how do I bring it in South Africa now? And it's not actually from South Africa and all of this. And for me, I really had to sit with this for a long time. I get what it is. I feel this. I feel the connection. I feel the spiritual expansion and the energetic kind of growth within me, and resilience, and more love. I can see how I am in my life, a lot softer where I used to be so hard, and a lot more resilient where I used to be a little weak, and so much balance that has come in. But then I really had to sit with but is that cacao, or is that just my life journey with other practices? So I really had to distill the essence for myself. What is cacao? And it comes back to this. It is love. She is one way. There's many other ways in life to do this, but I think nowadays our plant medicines are really coming as these beautiful teachers. And there's a prophecy that goes along with this, which I can give in a moment. And they're coming to remind us that we're a little out of alignment right now, within our belief of what we are here, or our place in the world as humans, and we just need to keep that in check, because we are part of the diversity of life. And we might be a little bit out of alignment now. So these beautiful allies, these plants, are coming to remind us of that. And specifically how cacao does that is she helps us to detox the spiritual heart and cleanse the spiritual heart by feeling. It's the most simplest thing, actually. We could use a different language here, but my language is through cacao. She's allowing me to actually feel and process emotions. So part of our kind of being a little bit out of alignment at the moment as humans in this greater diversity that we are part of is that we have just given so much preference to the head, the intellect, And we have completely disassociated from the rest of us, including the heart. And there's so many of these diseases nowadays that never used to be a thing. A lot of mental health problems, obviously a lot of physical issues as well, people sitting too much, not using their bodies properly, all of this, because we've just given so much emphasis to what the mind is able to do, and our technological evolution has just, of course, the curve has just gone, and it's amazing, it's incredible what we're able to do, but we're not only the head. And so the head has kind of gotten a little bit out of balance. We could say our ego is kind of a little bit too inflated as well. We think that's what it's all about. And so cacao has come back. She's one of many medicines, but she has come back out of the forests. And this was the prophecy thousands of years ago by the Maya people. They said that when the world has gone into chaos, or when the world goes into chaos, cacao will come out of the forests, out of the rainforests, and remind us of our place and help us reconnect back. And this is a very similar prophecy with a few other plant medicines. They just have a different technology of how to do that. Cacao's technology is reminding us to access the heart space and the qualities that rest there. And when we start to feel things like forgiveness and compassion and kindness, if we haven't experienced that for some time, we do start to get emotional. And the heart is also the water element of emotions. Allow them to flow. It's not so long ago that there used to be the saying of, oh, just suck it up, get on with it. No pain, no gain. Only boys cry. There's this kind of very old paradigm way of being. And they're still living, living generations today that had that instilled in them, that had that conditioning. And so, Candace, this is leading me into actually answering a bit more directly your question. So it's for us to distill for ourselves the context. And I have also found that not only with the older generations, which have a certain conditioning to them, so to understand the context that within which they grew up. A lot of them, it was a lot of survival out of the war, Second World War, and there was this just have to survive. You just have to survive, and a lot of that was through technology and had to get jobs, and a lot of focus on finances and using the intellect to kind of just carry on and have children and just get on with it. And a lot of shields were put up over the heart. And now comes, I would say my generation and younger generations, and it's a completely different world. Different world. I mean, here we are sitting across from each other on a little box over something that we can't actually touch, the internet. It's bizarre compared to my grandparents. This wasn't even an idea. It was just crazy to even think about these kind of things being possible. So very different context. So the understanding already there, I would say, some kind of a medicine. But also to remember that we can only take responsibility for our sovereignty. We can only take responsibility for our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And how other people receive that, that's on them. That's their responsibility. So that's one piece. Easier said than done, especially in families, especially if these people are going to be in our lives. They might push back and they might, question us. And especially if there's a dynamic now of children, grandparents, and there's that whole thing where you're the kind of cheese in the sandwich there, having to manage both the sides of the generational gap. So yes, I've experienced this many times, and I needed those triggers. They were so uncomfortable, but they got me to sitting and feeling into what is true for me. And I want to honor that. I want to continue to live in my sovereignty and honor that. And so I just started, and it took a lot of time. I'm very sensitive. It took a lot of time to build up enough resilience to just stand my truth and recognize and not be affected by somebody else's view of that. Because I honestly feel I'm coming from a place of kindness, of truth, of right relationship, and it might not be that they like what I have to say or have to do. And this was before I even started working with cacao. I mean, nowadays, I would say yoga, for example, is so much more mainstream than ever before. And it's definitely more mainstream than cacao. And only a few years ago, my grandpa remarried. I was visiting them. I went to the bottom of the garden to be private, and I was doing my yoga practice, which at that time involved a few sun salutations. I sat down and I meditated, and I might have done a bit of breath work. No chanting, nothing crazy. I wasn't taking my clothes off. I wasn't standing on my head for 5 hours. I was just, doing a bit of movement, and then it looked like I was just sitting. Well, I was shunned. I was told that I was doing the devil's work, not from my grandpa, but from my grandpa's then wife. Bless her soul. She's no longer around. And I'm grateful for that now, it was so uncomfortable. I mean, I went back in the house, and then everybody was, there was just a horrible energy. And I was called in. My grandpa talked to me. He said, when you're staying here, you have to abide by our rules. And I was so confused. I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. And eventually, the topic of what I was doing in the garden came up, and I was like, "Are you joking? I was just doing my yoga practice. Like, what era do you live in? Like, how is this supposed to be like the devil's work?" Anyways, it was very uncomfortable while I was staying with them. And I'm grateful for that now, because it got me to really question, like, oh, am I? First of all, am I? Is there truth to that? And I could 100% answer, no, there's no truth to what she perceived. And I could then understand, okay, I can see there's fear behind this. I can see it's fear largely because there's an unknown, there's a misunderstanding. And if only she was open to sitting down and having a conversation, she could have learned something. I could have shared what this beautiful technology of yoga actually is. There could have been a curiosity. So in the reflections, I put myself in another situation. And I thought, how wonderful would it have been if there was an openness and a curiosity rather. So I've tried to approach life from that. When I don't understand something, I see someone doing something different, I notice if I'm going to judge them, because that's natural. It's part of our survival. We judge good, bad, danger. Must I run? Must I flee? Is this a friend, foe? That kind of thing. But I check in with that and I go, all right, is this judgment necessary right now for my survival? And if not, if I'm not in danger, let me just try shift that energy, transmute that energy into curiosity and ask a question, open dialogue, have a conversation. Just be curious. So often that is met then with the other person going, oh, I feel seen. Okay, cool. Let's get into, and then it just starts, human to human, heart to heart. Because we can set up so many boundaries for ourselves and so much disconnect if we judge and we just keep that as the big wall that we put up around ourselves. So that was one of my first experiences. I say it was like the other day, but it was quite some time ago now. With cacao, it's come up again and again and again. You might know Cape Cacao is on social media, Instagram, Facebook. And some people have known me from before. They followed me, they follow Cape Cacao, they see what I share as well. Sometimes some things of Cape Cacao on my private social media spaces. And the one day I received this very long, very personal message. Thank goodness, it was a DM, a private message. And it was from someone who I can't really remember, but from, a few years before I started working with cacao back. And she was very Christian. And in her view, I had entered into a cult, and she was concerned. And it was a very long essay. And a lot of it, there was a lot of fear. I could read there was a lot of fear in it. And kind of towards the end, there was just, I pray for you, I pray for you, I pray for you. And I sat with that for some time, just thinking, going through all my, reactions, but not pushing them out yet, sitting with being triggered, being so triggered, feeling like I'm not seen, I'm not heard, how dare she, kind of my entitled part coming out, like all of this. And then I really just tried to put myself again in curiosity, me put myself in her shoes and see where she's coming from. And it was easier to do because it wasn't a direct, right there, person to person, moment to moment, like interaction and confrontation. So there was a bit of, I couldn't actually remember who she was either. So that was a bit easier as well, just not really an emotional connection. Difficult with family when they're right there in the same room, conversations are happening. But for what it's worth, let me just talk you through my process. So I had time to pause on this. I reflected on it. I used that as part of my shadow practice actually. And I just sat with that discomfort of what those feelings were that were being generated. And I allowed myself to feel them. And that was so much of my work at the time and still is. Let me just feel this. I sat with cacao. I opened up my ritual space. I called in spirit to be with me and to show me what I needed to see here. And so I went through some of my fears, some of my judgments, some of my, defensive nature. And what is that showing? And at the end of it, what I chose to read from the message is, I pray for you. I pray for you. And I thought, how beautiful. And so that's how I responded, which could have been taken as, oh, you're being quite facetious now. But I came to a place within me of such peace that I chose to thank her for praying for me. And that's how I responded, because I chose to respond. I could have also left it, which is another choice, and I was completely entitled to not respond. but I didn't respond with a reaction, which is, I think, so much part of our fast-paced nature. But the gift of giving ourselves time to pause and reflect and go, well, what is mine? And what is then mine to work on? And what is theirs? And then I can't take responsibility for that. But what is mine to work on? Can I transmute that? And it took me some time with that particular message. It took me some time to work through the emotions that were present. I didn't force it, I didn't suppress it. But at the end, what came was this beautiful gratitude of how wonderful. If we could, I would love more people to pray for me. Great. God's on my side as well now. And they're praying daily for me. Because I think it was something at the end, like really desperate, like I pray for you daily, that you might find the way. And I was like, wow, what a wonderful wish. But I read it through very different eyes after sitting with that practice of just going through everything that came up for me, day after day after day. And probably after 2 weeks, I then responded. And it wasn't from a place of spitefulness or, wanting to get back at her. It was very genuine. And that was quite a powerful medicine at the time for me. And it's something that I've just, remember that I can do. I have the ability to transmute these kind of misunderstandings where people are coming from a place of fear and reaction. And they just project their fear, they project their misunderstanding. And honestly, I believe at the end of the day, all of us, at our core, we are all just wanting love, and we are wanting to love. So if we as practitioners of the heart can find, and life will give us this every single day, opportunities. We look for those now. If we see those as opportunities to try and practice using whatever is there and transmute it from the medicine of our heart into love, either to receive it or to give it, the world will be a better place. But it starts with us. It starts with one opportunity at a time. And maybe it's too much at that time, and it's fine. We don't have to take every single opportunity because there's a lot out there in life. So Candace, coming back directly to a question with family, yes, I've had this directly with my father, very similar, very religious, Christian. He's always supported me with silence. He's never told me I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but I know he doesn't understand. And so the 1 year, I invited him and my mom to have a ceremony. And I knew there would be a bit of resistance just because of the lack of understanding. And so I gave context. I said, I want you to make this it was actually, I think it was New Year's. I was spending New Year's with them. I said, I would like us to acknowledge the year and reflect on the year and then celebrate what we have, gratitude. And so without anything around cacao or ceremony words just yet. And then to, maybe just set an intention for the next year. And I would like to do that by serving you some nice hot chocolate and work with the heart and love. And this is kind of what I do when I'm doing the work with cacao. I just have a different language that I use. But I would like you to, to pray to God while we are doing this. And we're going to, at that stage, I've been doing a lot of ancestral work as well. So they also actually very gently and kindly introduced the work I was doing then. And so I said, we're going to also ask, mom and dad, of my dad, and mom and dad of my mom, ask granny and grandpas to come in, and we're going to serve them some food as well during the ceremony, and I'll make some hot chocolate for us, which I call cacao. So I gave a lot of context, a lot of understanding, but this didn't just happen for me. It was a journey. It was a journey of also just being excited in the beginning, sharing my truth, not very wisely though, and getting a lot of resistance back and realizing, okay, I went around the very youthful energy, which is also a way that we grow and learn, like a bull in a china shop. I just went around like a puppy, right? Lots of energy and just causing havoc in the room, just running around, lots of energy, doesn't know how to contain it, or like a young kid. And with age, we mature and we grow a bit wiser in how to contain that and slowly, introduce the little bits at a bit of time. It's not that we're tricking people into joining us in that space. We're still being truthful, but we're just being more selective of how we invite in people to join us, or how we share what is true for us, without diluting the essence, still being true to that. And I think this is part of life's journey. I think it's for all of us. Our families are going to be our biggest triggers and our biggest teachers at the same time. And it's okay if they don't understand or even agree or support what we do. I think part of their role is to be a bit of a pushback so that we learn how to build a healthy resilience in life. So that when we do go out there and we get a message, for example, like I got, like somebody literally like shaming me and telling me what a terrible human being I am because I'm not following her religion, and then saying, well, I'll pray for you, that's how bad it is because you are literally going to go to hell. That I could transmute that. And if I'd have had it so easy and so supportive from my family throughout my life, because they just understood everything, then that message that I received might have been the end to me. It might have been, I might have been needing to go into hospital because of that. Mental asylum. So how healthy is our psyche? How healthy is our sense of self? That we can still go out into the world and share our truth. And it's a journey, to develop that healthy inner sense of self. There's a lot to say on it, as I said before. There's a lot to say. But does this they give you a bit more of a direct something, or do you want to just flesh out your question a bit more?
No, I think that's great, Fran. I think it was just getting a perspective. Like for me, it's something I've kind of parked for the moment. I hadn't really kind of thought I need to go and spend time with him. And actually, I can be quite confrontational as well. So my thing is also I've kind of just taken a step back and I've gone, I'll just let it simmer there for the moment. We'll each do our own thing. But I think I think you have a good point in that I would actually like to try and introduce it in a way, and maybe it will be a slow burn. But of all the people, it's so interesting. It's because I know it's also, like you say, fear-based, because from his relationship with his mum, my grandmother, there was already a tension from when we were younger with around religion, and it was to do with a whole bunch of things. But so interesting because it's almost like he's stepping into that same pattern now and almost doing that with me as to what his mum did with him, actually. And I'd like to actually show him that without obviously putting it up front in that way. And maybe there's a way that we can open the conversation in that space. And of all people, he's probably actually would really, really, really benefit from, because I think a lot of who I am, I see reflected from his behavior. And I said to you before, like one of the biggest lessons for me around Cacao was vulnerability and, opening heart space and really getting into that. And he needs that as well. So yes, he softened in his old age, but when things get to these kind of uncomfortable conversations, he is quite, what's the way? I guess narrow-minded, or just like it's his way or the highway kind of thing. Like he's also quite able to argue a point. And if you don't know and you aren't able to articulate back, exactly how you feel, and you haven't distilled down, exactly how you can say it and put it across, I think it would be very challenging. And I don't like to get into that position where I can't, speak back and hold my own. And him and I do clash a lot because I'm probably the most outspoken within the family. So I think it would actually be, and it's interesting actually, because the rest of my family and all my siblings, we're a big family, they all support what I'm doing and they're all involved in it at some point, but yet none of them would probably really sort of stand up to my dad and kind of, say that. They'd probably just also avoid the conversation. It's almost like I need to speak for everybody, even though they all believe what I'm thinking. So maybe it's maybe like you say, it is a good challenge and a good lesson and a good thing to be able to kind of have that articulated for myself and be able to have that conversation. It would be lovely to actually, and my mum, I think, is very interested, and she's kind of, she's on the fringe sort of thing of like, well, tell me more, tell me more. But I think it would be nice to actually maybe find a space to invite them in at some point and see if we could have, that conversation, if we could break that down. And it would be cool.
Well, all the best for that, because it is a journey. And I mean, one more thing I'll say on this is that, sometimes, well, let's put it this way, dialogue doesn't always have to be the only way.
Yeah.
Like I recognized with my dad, it would have had to be through more through action, more through the experience of something and suggestions, rather than sitting, making eye contact face to face. And I think it's just to kind of keep speaking for yourself, just saying, what has worked for me, and can you recognize how 10 years ago I would have reacted like this, blah, 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 or this has happened to me and it's because of the work I've been doing on myself, or, you know, the way I've been looking at the world from a different angle. And,
Yeah.
you know, you can, if you do have a connection into the understanding of the essence of the religion or the tradition, I'm just saying now in general for anybody else, that they come from, which if you've been brought up in that, you generally do. And if you found some peace within that, then you can also use examples, you know, try bring in examples through that lens, because you because you have been brought up in that, you're able to look through that lens as well. So you can bring in, you know, certain examples from your own life, but through the lens, that lens. And sometimes to actually just guide the experience, without it being like we're going to sit down and have a formal cacao ceremony now. You can invite them to just, you know, kind of, this is a practice that's really helped me. For example, maybe anxiety comes up once or twice, and you can say, well, let's just breathe, you know, and I put my hand here, and you can speak to the science, you know, speak to the science of why that connection is important and why the breath can really help us. And then sometimes, you know, what I say to myself, you know, this is you then narrating to everybody else. Sometimes what I say to myself is, it's okay. It's okay. And I know love. I know love. You know? And it's just these little hints, little breadcrumbs that you drop. So we don't have to always have the dialogue. And again, entering into this, it takes a lot of courage, because I would actually advise everybody just to know that going into any kind of engagement, especially with those that are really close to us, try and not have an expectation. So be very clear on what your intention is there. If it's that you want to just make sure that you are heard, then know that you might not be understood. You might be heard, but you might be understood. And it might, you know, bring up a little bit more confrontation or conflict, confusion. But if we are so caught up with the expectation of wanting to be acknowledged, affirmed, outwardly loved and shown that love, and then we don't get that, we might start setting up this inner dialogue of I've failed. And especially if it's our nearest and dearest, that's really going to hit a lot deeper than if we do that. For example, you know, my example now with the message on Facebook that I got with somebody I couldn't really even remember. If I'd have tried that with her and nothing came back, and nothing did come back, well, it's fine. But if I'm going to try that with my dad, for example, and I'm not met with, I totally understand, I totally get it now, I still support you, I love you, and I know he does, but if I don't get met with what I want, it's going to have a deeper impact. So just be very clear on intention and then expectation management.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks.
all the best for that. So I said I was going to do this halfway, but I'm going to do it now. My little shameless 2 minutes. I'll keep it very short. Candace has already joined our cacao training, so she knows. It used to be a 3-month training. We are doing it now in double the amount of time, because I feel, as I've deepened into my work with cacao, that this is merely just the start. And I've noticed that over the years that the groups are actually needing a bit more time to go through the material to really embody the practices. And the container is what a lot of people say is so much of the support there, and what they miss is the regular meets with the group, even if it's just to get the recording afterwards. Of course, there's the self-study and all of that to keep them going during the meets, but it's just to have more of that nest with me and with the group. So it's now going to be 6 months. We're starting it in October. It'll still have the same format of working through level 1 to level 2, and then we'll end in March, end of March. So that's also open to anybody that's done the training before. All alumni will get 50%. That's been a standard thing that we've always offered. We haven't yet opened enrollments. I'm just making the announcement. You're the first to know. And then, if you don't know, we have a starter kit, which I'll put in the chat here. Candace, for what it's worth, it might be useful for you to check it out. It might help you, you know, sharing with other people. Kirsten, you might want to check this out. So it's cacao.com / sacred cacao starter kit, all with little dashes between the words. So that's the one. That's the free starter kit. So you can just like check out how I guide certain practices, a little bit of information there. If that's the incorrect link, then I will be able to send this to you again. I think it's Sacred Cacao Starter Kits. So check that out. It's also, if you go onto our website under the resources tab, it's there. Yeah, and if the cacao training speaks to you, then when enrollment's open, you're welcome to join us. The other thing I was going to mention is if you feel called to do a donation, this is not coming to Cape Cacao, but this is part of our greater love, spreading the love and the abundance of which finances can be part of. There is a organization that do amazing work in Cape Town. They're called Great Girls, and at the moment how my Zoom is, I can't actually just get the URL. But if you put Great Girls Cape Town into Google, it'll come up, and they do mentoring. So they've got a mentorship program with grade 11s and 12s from Bel Air and Lavender Hill. So it is very much for people that are local, you'll know those areas. And is to help them just transition from high school into the world at large, where they've got to support themselves, get a job, and they don't necessarily have that being given to them in the education systems. So the mentoring program is that they have an adult who's been selected on certain criteria, that's gone through the mentorship program to be a facilitator, to be a mentor, and they mentor them for a good few months, up to a year. And they just give them, there's a bit of a structure for it, but they develop beautiful relationships, and they give them the mentoring that they need to go into the big bad world. And especially going from those certain communities, the great thing here is that it empowers the women, the girls to be women, to take that back into their communities and just to continue to spread this specifically amongst girls and women. So you can imagine the ripple effect there as well, just empowerment and believing in ourselves and having a voice. And also just calling out injustices, and so yeah, they do great work. So that's that. I wanted to see if there are any other questions. We've got time for another one. Otherwise, we can do a little bit of a close. So,
don't have a question, Fran, but
yeah,
I think it's awesome that you've extended the time, because I honestly feel that is 100% accurate from my experience as well. It's just, it is a lot to take in. You're loving it, you're in it, you're doing this whole thing, and then kind of leaving that and then trying to integrate it back yourself, I think is quite tough. Like, I mean, like with anything, I guess, sticking with the routine, sticking with the ritual, making sure that you're, doing it in the same way, and kind of building on that practice. I think it is quite tough. So I think that's awesome that you've extended it.
Oh, thanks so much, Candace. Yeah, we'll see. We could argue the other way, that like a 6-month container, wouldn't that be even more tough than leaving a longer container? But the idea is that there's a bit more integration during the training, as well as towards the end. Just be a few more practices given for that time, and
you know what, you also make time for something, and that the thing is, when you've got a commitment to something, you'll make that time, and when you've got the support of a community, you'll make that time to kind of show up. So it kind of it builds that in, I think, nicely, which is good.
And as you know, it goes so fast, especially that second part, the level 2
really
part, and that's where there's a lot comes up there. That's where we go into the personal development, the shadow integration, the dream work, the voice activation, and just to have now a longer time just to really feel into that. So thank you for that. Beautiful. All right. So then I invite us just to come to a relaxed space again. I'll just do a short closing for us in gratitude for our time. So I'm going to place a hand on the heart here and a hand on the belly. Feel free to, however you like, soften or close the eyes, place the hands, connect to the breath. Just take a moment for gratitude for showing up today for yourself, whether you here on the live or receiving the recording. Just to start to inquire into the heart, how it feels, not having an expectation of anything comfortable or nice there, but just to acknowledge whatever is present, even if there's just a neutral sensation or feeling. And just to start the practice of meeting ourselves where we are at, from a place of holding and support and love, however you find yourself right now. Just taking 2 breaths of acknowledgement into that space. So you can just imagine breathing into the heart and just acknowledging whatever is there without judgment, just with capacity of love and support. Make those breaths really audible, deep, long. It's really meeting yourself, breathing into that space. And just reminding yourself that you are so much more than just your day-to-day experience. That you have such incredible capacity to love, to be loved. And may this remembrance be part of your journey more and more as you continue this life. And we thank the heart, the spirit of the heart, and the fire burning within all of us. And we thank the spirit of cacao for reminding us of this abundance that we have inside. So just take another deep breath. Just holding it for a moment if you can. And then to close, exhale. Open up the eyes. And thank you very, very much for joining. And I will hopefully see you very soon. I know Candace is coming to Bali with us, so that's very exciting. And
So exciting.
Whenever we can meet in person again or online, I look forward to that. So thank you both for showing up today, and to all of those getting the recording, sending you much love. Have a beautiful evening and day and week and weekend further.
Thanks, Fran.
Toodaloo. Much
Bye.
love.